more than 300 misconduct allegations out of more than 600 complaints that were submitted in the 2021-2022 school year. So that means 300 allegations of misconduct with students, your students in Chicago public schools. They investigated it and found out, you know what? You were right. Something messed up happened. One particular case that this Fox News article pointed out, and we'll definitely leave a link for this, concluded that one teacher groomed and sexually assaulted a 17-year-old student 3 times. The teacher was charged with multiple counts of sexual assault. After a November 2022 trial, the teacher was acquitted on all counts, despite evidence provided by the student and social media records. So, not only are some of these teachers abusing your students, but they're not even being held accountable for this in the court of law. Hudson, what are your thoughts?
I think, so what happens in so many of these types of cases, right, is you have a situation where one party says we had sex and the other party just says no, we didn't. Right? So
Mm-hmm.
you might have text messages, you might have, social media accounts where stuff was said, but when it comes to the actual sexual part that happened, there's no actual proof of that, and therefore it just it turns into a he said she said.
Right.
And and again, it just goes to we can't get any justice for women, we can't get justice for our kids. It's just crazy to me, because even after all that, you acquitted them, okay, but if you got text messages, you got and it's not okay to acquit them, but it happened. I'm just saying it's happened.
Right.
So, but if
Right.
we move further after that, if you have text messages that they inappropriately talked, if you have social media accounts where they inappropriately interacted, this person should never work at a school again.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't picture that that's happening. Even if they're let go from a Chicago public school, again, it's just like these cops. Another reference to cops. Cops
Right.
don't work at this district anymore. They get pawned off and go to another district.
Right.
Right? How many companies, think about it, how many companies do not mention anything about your past history where you apply for a new job?
Mm-hmm.
I know specifically that plenty of companies I work for, all they will tell you is this the date he started working here, this the date he ended work here. And that's all they will tell you.
Yeah, they won't tell you, hey, we fired him because he assaulted somebody on our
Yeah,
on our
they won't tell you
premises.
anything. And so this guy, in that particular case you mentioned, I believe it was a male teacher, female student. Well, this male teacher is probably going to be teaching somewhere, for however long, and hopefully, all you can hope is that he's learned this lesson and won't do it again. But that tends not to be the case for these types of people, right? They tend to do it again. And again, this is something else where we have to severely watch our vote. We have to really watch our vote, and we need to look at these things and make it clear, because it hit home for me when this school year, the school that my daughter goes to, there were some allegations made against some faculty, right? And so, I'm scared to death emailing up there. And, I knew my daughter wasn't involved, but again, my daughter goes to this school.
So she could have been.
She could have been.
Right.
And if they don't do the right thing about this situation, if they don't get to the true bottom of this situation and do what's right
Pull her
about
up out of there.
exactly. But where do I take her? I mean, as you
Right.
saw, 600 allegations, 300 found it, was enough
And
for them
some
to,
of those other 300 were probably factual as well. They just couldn't get quite enough
didn't have
evidence
enough.
to confidently say that it was factual. But y'all know. I mean, let me read a couple of more of these examples. There's another one, again, a male teacher, female student. The pair exchanged hundreds of text messages and calls. He sent her a message. Again, this is a student, so she's underage. He sent her a message saying, "I'm ready to fuck right now. I'm not going to be gentle either." When he became aware that he would be under investigation, he allegedly threatened to kill the girl and her family. He was arrested and eventually sentenced to time served
Huh.
and 4 years probation after pleading guilty to sexual assault and criminal sexual abuse. Another one, high school teacher allegedly exchanged 4,000 text messages with a female student, including 400 text messages in one day. The teacher said he was in an open marriage and was attracted to other people. I mean, these are just absolute fucking psychos.
Yeah.
Psychos. And they're littered throughout our Chicago public school district.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's absolutely insane. At least for that second one, the stuff that he pled guilty to, at least I believe that means he won't be able to go near a school again, not legally at least.
Hopefully.
He won't be able to work at a school again. So at least I can take some solace in that. But imagine, what kind of trauma are these kids going through, right? And for some, they were having traumatic experiences that may have led them to this path in the first place, right? Because I believe when I read that article, it read like it was consensual between the two parties. Let me make it clear.
There's no
Sex
such
with an
thing.
underage person, there's no such thing as consent.
No.
An underage person cannot legally consent. It's not. So I almost hate the way this article was even framed, right? It's framed as though, these were two people who made an agreement to have relations, with the text back and forth, with this, that, or the other. No, a kid cannot consent. They just can't. And then when you have it being a school administrator or teacher or whatever, doing this to a student, well, that's harass. That's like harassment in the workplace. You hold the power over this student now, right? Because you are a faculty there, right? So it's just insane to me the way this stuff gets reported out from the media when we should be really just kind of putting out there like
Picking up pitchforks.
Yeah. I mean, this should infuriate everyone, and we should all be up there at these school council meetings with that article saying, "What the fuck is this? What is going on? Are y'all vetting these people? What is happening here? And what are we doing to make sure this type of thing isn't going on?" Because, with 400 messages in one day, right, that's probably happening while they're both at school at that moment in time, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know how you could monitor it. But, I don't believe in any privacy for my kid while they own my phone. So
Right.
I know I'm going to be watching text messages. I'm going to be watching what's going on with my kid and my phone if she get one.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I'm gonna know that password, and every so often I'm gonna pick up that phone and be like, "All right, what you doing?
Yeah.
Hey, what's
I
going on?"
I almost question.
But and to the credit of the parents involved in this, let's be honest. All the time, it's the parents who catch them. It's not like these school administrators are the one catching it. All the times, it's the parents who are coming to the administrators like, "Hey, I found out my daughter was doing this. I found this on my daughter's phone. Yeah, what the fuck is going on up at your school?"
Well, and here's the, we got all these body cams and dash footage for the police, right? And I don't want to live in a state where everything's getting watched, or at least to feel that way. But let's be honest, everything's being watched. Why are the schools any different? Why are the schools any different? you know, should should do we need teachers in there with their own personal cells anymore? You know, let the teachers have a school company cell where we don't have to worry about, let's pay for part of their sale so it becomes property that we can request under a FOID
Mhm.
recommendation. So I can see there, because how it works with police, if police are on duty, right? And they,
Mhm.
even if they use their personal phone to like take a picture or to do something while on duty, I can make a case to get that record and get the information off of that police officer's phone. I think the same should go for it. We need to start figuring out what kind of public records we can keep in these schools and what we can request, at least as parents. If I can prove I'm a parent, I think I should have access to what is going on in my kid's classroom.
I think none of that is going to matter until there's a real punishment for being looked at as a political operative that allowed these types of things to happen. Let's be honest, this is not the first time we've heard about massive, rampant abuse of children in the Chicago public school system. And to be honest, there's just no punishment. Like no matter who the administrator is, no matter who's the president is that's considered connected with what's going on, they there's nothing, it's nothing that causes them to lose their job, because at the
Mhm.
end of the day this is all on the mayor. The office is appointed by the mayor. The mayor appoints these people who are running the Chicago public school system. So it should tumble on down and impact the mayor. But let's be honest, what's happened, what the dysfunction of Chicago public schools never affected Rom, never affected Daley, and there's no reason that is to expect that it's going to affect Lightfoot either.
Mhm.
So to me, until the general Chicago public decides to make that connection and say, if there are 300 students that were abused in the Chicago public school systems, that means there are 300 kids in Chicago that were abused directly because of the dysfunction and the lack of care on the part of the mayor's office. Until that connection is made, nothing is going to matter. You can put all the cameras in, you can make it company verified phones. You can do whatever you want. But at the end of the day, the people in power will know what happens to these kids doesn't really matter for me. And therefore, even if these people are caught, like you said, they're just going to be shifted over to another place. Like
Mhm.
to me, this goes back to the general Chicagoans. They're not reading, they're not staying abreast on situations, and they don't use their political power, even if they're aware of situations. So nothing matters. The only reason your voice matters is if you use your power. If they know you won't vote, if they know they're not going to face any sort of consequence for abusing your children and disrespecting you, then they don't have to pay attention. They don't have to care. It's all just noise. Because at the end of the day, you can't stop anything that I'm going to do. But if I know that if I abuse 300 of your children, that you all will then turn around and band together and stop anything that I'm trying to do and get in the way of my investors' goals and stop me from being able to continue whatever political position I have, then it becomes an issue. Then I pay attention and then I decide, okay, you know what? Protecting your children is in my best interest, and therefore I'm going to do it. None of that is true right now. So these kids are going to be continue to be abused no matter what and what new initiatives are put in at these schools.
Yeah. And it's crazy because if they investigated 600 of these cases, you
Hmm.
know, that means it's probably 6,000 out there. That's
You
the
know it.
scary part.
You know
That's
it.
such a scary part of it, you know.
There's a whole lot of smart criminals. And let's be honest, in Chicago, there's been a couple of phases where there were rampant black women who were coming up missing.
Yeah.
And I don't think those situations were ever solved. I certainly never saw an article where they were like, "Well, this is the follow up. This is what happened to these women, and they're all accounted for now, and all those kind of things." So we never really knew what is happening to these people. So
Mhm.
there are plenty of folks who threaten, to, I'll kill you and your whole family. I bet you there's definitely some other smart criminals who was like, oh, the jig is up. All right, let me go ahead and slit your throat and make sure that I'm never outed for who I really am. Hey,
Hmm.
I got some money for you. Why don't we meet up in this private spot? Like,
Yeah.
let's be serious. And this is the problem. But again, are you going to band together and actually use your political power to try to stop these type of things from happening?
Oh, and the last thing I'm gonna mention, we have to stop thinking of these. Part of it, just like with black kids, we look at them like they're grown, and they should be
Mm,
treated as adults when they're kids. And we
come on
got to
now.
stop looking at these 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds, and the moment they do something a little, we start to look at them like they're promiscuous adults, and we
Exactly.
have to stop doing that.
Exactly.
Kids always do dumb shit. That's what kids do. That's why
I
they're
don't care
kids.
if she asked for it, bro. I
Yeah,
don't care
yeah,
if she was down for it. I
yeah,
don't care if she wanted some money, you gave it to her, and she was all down for whatever happened. I don't give a fuck.
yeah.
She was underage. Leave her alone. She was down
Underage.
for it because somebody else already took it from her at 14. So she's been like this for years. That doesn't mean you need to make it even worse. That
Yeah,
doesn't mean you need to pile on to this.
yeah,
But you're exactly right. We complain all the time about white people treating our children, especially our black boys, like they're adults, trying them like they're adults. But black people do the exact same thing. We
yeah,
look at these kids, we hear about these teachers taking advantage, especially again when it comes to boys. We look at these boys and they're 14, 15, and you find out the teacher slept with them. And I'll be honest, I've even cracked a joke before, like, yo, he probably wanted that. He was probably down for it. That's not the point. That's not the point.
mhm,
They shouldn't be having these situations and these type of interactions at such a young age. These teachers have to be held accountable. These people have to be held accountable. But again, I feel like even more than us not using our political voice, that whole perception that the kids probably wanted it and they're not really being abused makes it much harder to protect these kids and get justice because you
yep,
can't get people to really become invested in saying we need to hold these folks accountable and we have to do whatever is necessary to protect these kids. That is not the perspective. That is
yep,
not the perspective on sexual assault throughout this country, period.
yep. And then beyond that, the student teacher relationship. It's that is a position of power that
Hmm.
should not be used to garner. I'll take that even into college, where they're grown ups now. That position of power should not
Yep.
be used to manipulate a situation and to solicit, sexual contact or whatever the case may be. It
Absolutely
shouldn't
not.
be used. It's immoral at the least in college and in high school. And I get it. I've reviewed the laws before. The age of consent in many states now is turned to 16. I
Hmm.
understand that. Don't make it right. Don't
Hmm.
make it right. It ain't. And especially when you throw the teacher student relationship on top of this, it's a clear manipulation. It is a clear manipulation.
Hmm.
You know, I don't like it. I don't like that this teacher was acquitted. I don't appreciate it, and it really scares me. It really scares me.
Last note, shit like this is why my parents homeschooled me.
Mm.
Being straight up honest with you, they looked at the Chicago public school system, and we're talking about back then. I'm 38 years old, y'all. So 30 years ago, my parents looked at what was happening in Chicago public schools and said, "Nah, we could do better."
Did I ever tell you why my dad didn't want me to go to Mount Carmel?
Uh-uh.
So I had received a scholarship when I come out of elementary school. I was offered a scholarship to go to Mount Carmel High School,
Hmm.
right? As you know, at the time, I think they've been flirting with changing to a boy and girl
Hmm.
thing at Mount Carmel, but at the time they were an all boys school,
Right.
right? And and so one of the things my dad told me was that I don't know, you know, one of them teachers up there try to hem you up in that office, and you probably ain't gonna come back and tell me. You ain't gonna tell me so I can put a stop to it. I said, they're like, excuse me?
Mhm.
You know?
That's
And I
hilarious.
thought to myself, all hilarity aside in that, I thought to myself, would I have been too embarrassed to say something to my dad?
Probably.
We're talking about a 14-year-old kid at the time. Would
Mhm.
I have been too embarrassed to look my dad in the eye and tell him that happened to me? And
Mhm.
how many kids go through that train of thought, right?
Mhm.
Like I said, 600 cases they looked at, right? It's probably 6,000. How many didn't have the courage, the wherewithal, the confidence to step forward and say this happened to me,
Come on now.
right?
Come on
We
now.
got to protect our children.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree.